Hello everyone, welcome back to Gonch's Menagerie. I am Gonch. Pierce, this is for you. This video is a basics of painting miniatures or getting painting for tabletop miniatures with design for not having very minimal experience or knowledge of the hobby. If you're an expert painter, love to see your work in the Discord. This video is being created by request from my buddy Pierce, who's one of my players and a really good friend, really good and old friend of mine. In our community Discord, we have a friendly monthly painting challenge. Just do something, one month was basing, one month was paint something not your normal style or outside your normal palette. And my Pierce has had life getting in the way, and he wants to try miniature painting and doesn't really know where to start. So he asked can I do a video with the Army Painter starter set, which he has, and walk him through it. So we're gonna work on this together. So you want to start painting miniatures. You go out and you buy an Army Painter starter set or another starter set. You're going to get a brush. You're going to get a selection of paints. Um, I'm personally a fan of Army Painter, mainly because they're local, they're available, and they're relatively inexpensive. At this point, I would caution you against buying much more than that, especially if you don't know you are going to enjoy this hobby. Don't spend hundreds of dollars on something you aren't going to enjoy or stick with, because paint does dry, it does go bad at certain points, and then um, you're out all that money, right? So start small. And once you like it and you figure out you like it and you want to keep doing this, then expand. Um, Other things you're going to need is you're going to need something to hold your water, your paint water, and try to not make it the same as the cup you're going to be drinking out of when you're painting. I highly recommend a good light source. I have a painting or a desk lamp over mine that allows me to help paint because my eyes are getting bad as I'm getting older, and they've been bad for God knows how long. Um, and a paper towel to clean your brush with. So I use a wet palette and a dry palette. Um, a palette can be a ceramic plate you have, paper plate, anything you'd like, just something to hold your paint in. So we have all these together. Now you want to paint something. Well, what do you start painting? We have some artists in our community as well who will look at a blank canvas and then create something on this blank canvas, and I admire them immensely because I do not have that talent. I need something to follow and follow our guidelines to paint around. So let's talk miniatures. There are multiple different materials that make up miniatures and multiple different scales. These can be very confusing. Um, if you're brand new and just wanted to try this out, I would highly recommend just picking up a WizKids pre-primed soft plastic. They're available at a lot of friendly local game stores. If you want to try something a little bit different, maybe from Etsy with a resin print, or you have your own 3D printer you want to get something with, or have someone you know once has a 3D printer, resin is by far the better choice, in my opinion, for your first miniature trying to paint than an FDM. I'll go into that a little more in a bit. There's also multi-part plastic, which require a little more labor intensive. You got to take them off of the sprue and then put them together. And you need super glue or plastic cement. And then you have metal, which are one piece and they're cast because they're soft white metal. But then you also have to do some cleanup on them and get them ready to paint. But I have actually examples of each on my table, so let's stop talking and show you. All right. We have a FDM, we have a resin, we have a plastic, and we have a metal. And then we have an unprimed mini because that will come in handy. Because all right, we'll start with the granddaddy of them all, metal miniatures. Metal was one of the first forms that miniatures for wargaming and painting came in. Metal was actually cheaper for the longest time than plastics. Now metal is kind of creeping up in price. So this is an unprimed Longhorn steer from Knuckle Duster Miniatures. This is going to be table dressing for my cowboy game, Dead Man's Hand, table. So he's unprimed, but he is on a base, and the horns are glued on. He's ready to go, just needs a coat of primer. Now, when I mention primer a lot, what do I mean by primer? Primer is the paint before you paint. If I would put my acrylic paint, which is water-based, directly onto this miniature without the primer, the paint would eventually flake off through use because there's nothing to help it adhere to the material, the base material. By applying a primer coat, like this FDM Mini, that allows the acrylic paint I'm going to be using to actually add the color to adhere. So I'm going to bring this FDM up a little bit close and try to get the camera to focus on this. You might be able to see on the back of this cloak, and I mentioned that resin would be the preferred 3D printed Mini to start with for your painting journey, is because of this. FDM is plastic that's melted in lines, and there's layer lines that you can sand off. I'm not going to do that with this Mini. It was a free Mini from Local Con, but you have to do a lot of labor intensive work. As I run my finger up and down the back of this cloak, I can feel those ridge lines. Your paint's not going to flow smoothly across that. It's going to get caught in those layers. So FDM is ideal for like terrain or buildings, in my opinion, for on your table. If you're a war gamer like myself, or a wannabe war gamer like myself, but not so great for the miniatures themselves. The other 3D printed option is a resin. Now, resin can be brittle, and but it also can give you some amazing details. This one's kind of I would say, a pretty basic print. In this has been also primed, excuse me. But this is, I think, the model we're going to use to start with. Either someone local, you might have a printer, or a local game store might sell them, or I hate to recommend this to other people because Etsy is dangerous, but the store Etsy offers a lot of 3D printed models for sale in resin. I highly recommend them, but I also warn you, once you get started, you can't stop. It's like Pringles can. So the other option, which we mentioned was a little bit more labor intensive, was a hard plastic Mini. I actually don't have a soft plastic Mini I would like to show you, but this is a soft plastic Mini, and this is mildly primed, I should say. It's mildly primed. It comes in this gray plastic. You cut it off with what's called a sprue or a holder, and you put it together. This one hasn't been painted because I tried to make the gaps not as noticeable, and I completely butchered it a little bit by using green stuff. So we're going to try to salvage that at some point. And then lastly is a character piece for Guards of Traitors Toll for a civilian. Get this to focus again. So you've seen that all these models have a little bit different sizes to them, right? The dwarf is going to be, of course, naturally smaller. Let's talk about scale quick. Scale is from the eyeballs of the miniature to the base. And when I say base, I mean the part that's holding it up. This is your base. This is a puddle base, which is, where they have to do it to make the model, or do it so it sticks to the base, because trying to put just feet onto that would be a giant royal pain. But the base, so you stick it to the base. So from the eyes to the base is going to be about 28 millimeters. 28 millimeters. Yeah, metric, sure. 28 or 32 millimeter would be my recommended scales to go to. WizKids, I believe, are 32 millimeter. This is 28 millimeter. There is variation between 28s. As you can see with this dwarf to this human. Put them side by side. But then you can also go up in scale. This is a 75 millimeter statuette resin print. This is a 28 millimeter hard plastic. Very different scale. Very different challenges to paint. On the other side of the coin, going down, this is a 12.5 or 13 millimeter cannon, and this is a 28 millimeter figure. There is dudes that go alongside this, so you can imagine how small they are. Very different ways to paint, very different styles of painting, very different reasons of why you're painting them the ways you are painting them. So I would highly recommend 28 or 32 millimeter. Okay. So you've got your model, you got your accoutrements. Now where do you start? Well, you start by getting everything together, finding some quiet time to just try it out. You got your brush, you got everything else, but the first thing I want you to do is one, pat yourself on the back for trying something new. That can be hard to do. That can be hard to do. Two, I want you to remember that you are just now starting on your hobby journey. And if you look at anyone else's miniatures or completed works or their work in progress and you compare it to yours, you're doing it wrong. Because where they're at on their hobby journey is very different than where you're at. You could get to the same point as they did, or you could not, but you can't get past the fact that you have to start somewhere and put paint onto a figure, and paint on a brush, paint on a figure, and start the process. So give yourself a lot of credit for trying something new. Don't compare yourself to others because your journey is not theirs. And I think that's where we're going to leave this video, covering those basics there. And next time we'll start off using the Army Painter starter set colors, Pierce, minus the primer because I used all my primer and bought a bigger one. And we will use the basic brush and we'll kind of go from there. Talk about some terms you're going to hear and things of that nature. For if you would watch better painters than myself or more tutorial videos, kind of things I've my understanding of them, so maybe to help you at the same time, because sometimes I confuse myself and they'd be talking. Excuse me, I'm rambling at this point. Talk through some steps and some common terminologies when it comes to painting, things like coats, base coat, highlights, washes, etc., etc. We'll go that further in the next video. But if you made it this far, I really do appreciate you taking the time to watch. I hope if you're interested in this, you will recommend this to someone you know or know someone who might find this useful. And as always, I hope your dice roll well and your paint flows smoothly. And if interested, check out the description below for a link to the community. Hope to see you there. See y'all.